So our next presenter here is actually an old friend and colleague of mine. We were freshmen together here at the University of Utah, and we're both grayer and less hair now. But Clayton Norlen is an IT product manager with over 15 years of experience, specializing in publishing, content management, and collaboration technology. With a background in journalism, he is a staunch advocate for the First Amendment and the transformative impact of technology on communication. Off campus, Clayton keeps playing and breaking new tech in a home lab. He's an outdoor enthusiast and enjoys biking and hiking across Utah's diverse landscape. And today he's going to talk about AI and its effects on education. So please welcome me. Please join me in welcoming Clayton. So, thanks.
Testing 1, 2. Okay. One, I just want to tell everyone my colleague, Bibi Bear, was unable to attend today, so I'm going to be handling her portion of the presentation. The great news for you all is we have done it like dozens of times together, and you know it by heart. So I think you will get a comparable experience. So to start, I'm gonna introduce you all to Microsoft Copilot. It's a generative AI tool provided by Microsoft, and it is available for all university staff, faculty, and students. It's like a $20, $25 retail value. Everyone here gets it. And I would encourage you to use it as your primary AI companion. It is at this time the only approved AI at the University of Utah. That's not to say you can't play and experience other things, but this is the one the university would like you to use. Really quickly, large language models. What are they and how do they work? Really, they are statistical functions that map text to text. So when you enter a prompt into a large language model, it keys off of the language to find other words that are associated with it to create a response. So your prompts are incredibly important because they act as the seeds necessary for the output. The statistical models that go into these are remarkable, and the mapping that goes on, the training you hear about, the tokenization. This is PhD level stuff, right? You can spend whole careers learning about it. I think at a high level, it's important to know that the words you use are going to input the output or impact the output. All right, so piloting Copilot. Prompt engineering, I think, is today's Google foo. I think we've all had experience working with someone who is highly competent in Google. Maybe they learned operators, the value of quotes, ways of refining a search to better get results fast, right? Prompt engineering is a similar concept with large language models in which you create a prompt that has the necessary components to generate a consistent and reliable output. So some of the key things that go into creating a sensible prompt. Instruction, you need to tell the large language model what you want, right? I want a draft of a summarization of Ulysses in less than 500 words. Completion is to, well, these are actually, I'm realizing these are 4 different things I need to get my head straight. But let's see, let's jump ahead to, I've got more explanation here. Okay, so there's different ways to interact. The 4 models you can use to appropriately engage a language model are instruction, completion, scenario, and demonstration. And we're going to dive into each of those right here. So instruction, like I was getting to before, you're going to provide instructions that say, like this example, extract the name of the author from the quotation below. Another instruction might be, like I said, provide a 500-word summarization of the novel Ulysses. it's a really powerful tool, and I think one we're very used to when we work with each other, right? Here is a basic set of things I want accomplished for this goal. Another method of interacting with these LLMs is completion, where you may provide maybe the first paragraph of an email. Maybe it's a really emotionally charged topic. You're having to tell a colleague what a bad job they did at that presentation, right? And tell them in a way that's, kind and considerate. So you might seed or the LLM with a couple sentences that say, hey, things were a little helter-skelter during the presentation. I wish X, Y, and Z had happened. And just input that with the instruction of complete this prompt. The LLM will take it, ingest it, and provide a completed prompt to you. These are both really powerful methods of working. My favorite, though, is scenario. So I have 2 young kids, and I play pretend all the time. And one of my favorite ways to interact with an AI is to role play and give it an identity, like you are a senior legal scholar in the field of biomedical research, right? Read this white paper and summarize it to me in 3 main points that you would care about. So what that does is it triggers the LLM to, one, take on the persona of a biomedical, like legal scholar, right? That is a very specific niche. But by giving it that role, it knows how to interpret the white paper in a meaningful way. So a lot of times I work in IT, I'll say, you're a senior security analyst. Look at this technology implementation, and what are a few things I should be concerned about when we implement this technology? It responds as if it were that type of person. I really like the role play because it's easy for me to understand and be opportunistic in who I wish I could work with or collaborate with while I am writing a draft or researching a topic. So I go back to scenario all the time as an effective tool when using a language model. Another tried and true technique is demonstration. So in this, you could provide a writing sample and demonstrate what you want the LLM to produce. So I do this a lot in my own research where I'll go out and interview folks and say, hey, what technology do you like? What technology don't you like? What are some positives of Google? What are some negatives of Fox, right? And I synthesize those into a standard report I can provide to executive leadership to inform the strategy we make with certain technologies we have on campus. I can provide a draft of that where it will show a summary, main pain points, key indicators, and then a full transcript. And I'll provide the whole transcript to a language model and say, I need you to return the information in this exact standard for me. So it provides a reliable way of getting consistent outputs that meet the needs of me, the user, right? So this is a way of kind of refining the model to work for you. So these are really high-level concepts that you could take to any large language model you work with. And I would encourage you to use them. One in Copilot because it's the university's chat model, but they'll work equally well in ChatGPT, Claude, you name it. These are foundational concepts in interacting with language models and are essential to good prompt engineering. So let's dig into what makes a good prompt. And this is from Microsoft, specifically for Copilot, but what they endorse is a goal. What do you want? Context. Why is it important? What is the overriding need for this, right? Expectations, it should be to the tune of the Brady Bunch. It should be in a limerick poem. It should be written as if it were to appear in a medical journal, right? And then source. Source is a really good way to further refine these by giving it a website, a document, or some other source that you're going to key into. I will take questions in a second, but I'd love that you have them because I love talking about this. Here's an example. Draft an outline of a training manual about time management. Our audience is professionals who work in a hybrid environment and constantly need to attend virtual meetings and meet deadlines. The tone of the document will be friendly and suggestive. That is a clear prompt that hits these items, right? There's a goal, context, with expectations and a source. By creating prompts in this manner, you're going to more reliably get outputs. And this is prompt engineering. It's also good management, which is, I think, really funny that there's a linear correlation to that, because this is a collaborative relationship, right? And I think we heard garbage in, garbage out. Very much that. The instructions you give are the exact directly inform the outputs you're going to receive. Okay, citations, fine. So that is just a broad and really rapid introduction to large language models, Microsoft Copilot, and prompt engineering. Let's see. Do we have BB slides in here, Brandon? She did not send you the slides. Okay, we are going to rock these. So the second part of this is the fine print of AI and appropriate use of these tools at the University of Utah. Our use of these are governed by contracts in place at the University of Utah. So we have a contractor relationship with Microsoft that outlines what types of data can be stored in their systems, how long it's retained for, and the tool Microsoft Copilot falls into this and under those agreements. And this is why we encourage you to use Microsoft Copilot over other generative AI models. Microsoft Copilot is protected what we call the data protection addendum. Now, this is different than a business associates agreement, which is a key concept in getting HIPAA compliance data areas. The data protection addendum is a subset and does not afford all the same protections that you would find in the business associates agreement. Under the data protection addendum, so there's some really important protections you do get that you won't get in other areas. One, Microsoft will not retain or use your or claim ownership of your prompts. Now, this is a really important note, not retaining ownership of your prompts. So if you go to OpenAI and use ChatGPT in a free version, oftentimes even in a paid version, OpenAI will retain or claim ownership of your prompts. And that's really risky, right? When you consider if I'm going to use a prompt and provide, let's say, instruction or completion, right? Those could be considered your intellectual property in many regards, right? I'm writing this prompt. I made this prompt, and this prompt is going to provide reliable outputs I can use in my job. So like the example I gave here in the demonstration, I don't necessarily want OpenAI to own my idea of what makes a good product outline, right? Or what makes a good research study, or a good research outline, or maybe my course materials. So those data protections get really important in the consideration of what tools we use and what we give up by going outside of those protected areas. Another really interesting thing that's called out in the data protection addendum as it relates to Copilot is Microsoft absolves itself of responsibility in validating the output is not copyrighted or protected material, which shifts the burden of responsibility to you all as the users to validate you are not infringing on another person's copyright. So these LLMs were created by, I think what we'll find is maybe one of the biggest copyright infringements in like possible, right? Where they scoured the internet, they trained on all available data, regardless of the legality, to train these underlying models. So when you get an output, you want to be very careful as holding it out of your own, because it may have appeared in other areas of writing. It could be a snippet from a New York Times article, a snippet from, a Stephen King novel. So validating and verifying the information is incredibly important on these outputs. And it's interesting that Microsoft absolves itself of rights, right? So if there were a legal case, they could come against the person who held them out as their own. So my and BB's advice on this is these LLMs are really good for internal work and publication, but when you hold them out or publish them outside the university, there becomes some risk. I would encourage everyone to collaborate with your peers, with your departments, and potentially with someone like BB in compliance before you hold these out as your own, that you have reviewed, that you understand what parts were generative AI, what parts were your own, so that you can avoid any complexities like that. The data protection addendum, in addition, it's a really interesting thing because Microsoft is such an incredible juggernaut in the industry. They can update the addendum at their own will, right? We choose to stick with them because they're so big, but it's not like we have a choice to accept it. So they just update it on a regular schedule, like every quarter. A new release will come out. And it used to be that Microsoft wouldn't retain your chat. And that was great because if PHI accidentally fell into this system, it would be forgotten, right? We should only publish public information. We want to avoid sensitive and restricted data in these systems because of how they work and that they're under the data protection agreement. But if PHI were to go there, it's not held and no one can ever see it. So the risk is kind of nominal. However, Microsoft is changing to now retain prompts. The reasons for that are interesting. I've talked to some Microsoft reps, and the understanding is that Microsoft Copilot will work more like OpenAI so that you can see past conversations and go back and visit conversations you'd had. Right now, this is very present. You go in, you'll start a conversation with Copilot, and when you come back, everything's gone. You start over. So a lot of times when I'm training through it, it's like, save your prompts, export that, put them into a tertiary source so that you can come back and use those things again. So Microsoft has now changed to retain, which is interesting. And we'll see what functionality comes out of that. But what's great now is we still retain ownership of our prompts, which I think in the future are going to be a very important thing in the world of language models. What prompts do we use as an institution, as a team, as an individual to get reliable and expected outputs from these systems? Some really important points I want to hit really fast are about appropriate use with these. Right now, the legal landscape with generative AI is evolving rapidly. And we will see over the next few years cases brought like the New York Times by individual authors determining if there were copyright violations in creating and generating these large language models. The unfortunate thing with these language models today is any data they were trained on, there's no way to take it out. So it would result in the language model being destroyed and rebuilt without those works. If you want a fun topic to research, look at machine unlearning, because it theoretically is impossible to remove a piece of data from a language model right now. And that would require this entire industry to rebuild. So I think it'll be real from a legal scholar point. Is it too big now? And we're just gonna scoot the copyright violations under the rug and say, well, you did it, but don't do it again. And now anyone who does it is going to be punished. Or are they going to be forced to rebuild their businesses? I don't know. We'll see. So just be aware as you use these, when you're putting things out as your own, be mindful. I've started like including in a lot of my documents generated in collaboration with Microsoft Copilot. I do a lot of internal documents, right? I can ideate with it. I can come up with a template. I can have it edit. There's a lot of administrative functions that are really useful to run through with an AI. But I always want to indicate to my users or to my readers, right? This is AI content, not mine. So don't read this with the expectation of Clayton, who's highly intelligent and handsome, made this, right? No, this was made with an AI who is fallible, who may have hallucinated content.
Okay, well,
It's hallucination.
Yeah. So things to consider that way. I like when my users can validate and be a second pair of eyes on that generation to know what occurred. Because I edit differently when I know an AI was involved than I do when a peer was reviewing it. Like I was saying with data, we want to be really mindful about the types of data we put into these systems right now. I would encourage no one to put in intellectual property. I would not put in anything that has not been officially published and put into a journal or as part of the public record, because the IP considerations are big, especially in the concept of, oh, I'm going to work with ChatGPT on this really neat biomedical research I'm doing. And what information do they get out of that, right? Are they now the owner of that concept or the idea? Avoid using it for unpublished works at this time. Try and just use public data or anonymized data you have, where if you're using it, I'd never say like the University of Utah, I'd say a public institution, right? I try and remove language that localizes it to the student or the patient, right? And I'm sure you're all very aware of techniques you can use to anonymize data and make it usable. But those are some of the key concepts that kind of fall into this and where we're at with our agreements at this time. The university is seeking HIPAA compliant implementations of generative AI that we can use with patient data. And there are some exciting projects going on where that is the case. But those are just some guardrails I put around your use at this time. Not trying to be a negative Nancy on it, but just some things. We want to be good stewards of the data we're entrusted with, and those are the best ways to do it that we have now. I am going to go for questions.
Yeah, and Clayton will be part of the next workshop. So if you are interested in learning more about this, he'll be here. But just questions for the whole group before we break out.
I thought others would be interested. So you said in your prompt, and use the Teams conversation from the last week with Susie.
Oh,
My
absolutely.
question is, does Copilot, when I have it installed on my computer and I have Teams installed, have access to my Teams conversations?
So Microsoft, in their infinite wisdom, has rebranded a Copilot to mean a large language model. And there are like a dozen instances of what a Copilot is in the Microsoft stack. So Microsoft Copilot is web-based and available to everyone at the institution, and it has web access. There's also a service called Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is covered under our BAA and does have access to what we call Microsoft Graph data, which could be every email you've authored, every Word document you've authored, every Teams chat you've ever made. Pretty much if you've done it in Microsoft, this AI could interact with it. It's neat because it is covered under our BAA, and we do have pilots and implementations of it going on right now to understand it. But yeah, I have it and I can say, hey, in the past, I was out on vacation. What did I miss in the last 2 weeks, right? I'll scour all my meetings and all my emails and provide a summary that says, well, you should follow up with James because there were some things that happened on this contract and you should, talk to X, Y, and Z and do this.
The emails contain PHI.
Yeah, the M365 version is completely encased in our tenant and doesn't go outside of it. So it is covered under our BAA and can interact with PHI. So that's where it's really important to understand where these co-pilots or large language models fall in the realm of compliance and what the appropriate use for each one is. And it's, I'll be honest, it is complex and requires a lot of guidance on appropriate use. And I'm happy to dive into those more, but I think right now just know there's many different types and what they can do is best covered by the contracts we have in place with them.
Well, you mentioned not including any unpublished work into the Copilot, but now we're saying that all our email is visible to all the Copilot stuff. So then technically unpublished work would be in our email. So I guess how do we protect ourselves from Copilot stealing all our work and
So, yeah.
like that?
Excellent question. Those are, again, two distinct co-pilots. There's the M365 co-pilot that is covered under our business associates agreement and is licensed at $400 per user per year. And then there's Microsoft Copilot, which is free to all staff and available as a web service. So different tools. One is absolutely appropriate for different types of work. One is not. So we can work through the diagrams on those later.
So do I get the other one for $400 as well, or just the cheap one?
We're hoping to make it available in the software portal at some point where staff, researchers, faculty who are interested can enable it and leverage it in their work and operations.
Thank you. It's nice to meet you. And I have just a very burning question in my mind that I don't know actually you have covered it or not, but some faculties are wondering is our school going to introduce any AI plagiarism checker or something? So that is we always are discussing, and we know Turnitin kind of failed in certain cases, but I'm just wondering is it possible or is it under process that we can do something like that?
Yeah, that's so there are tools that are available. And if you worked with our digital learning technology group on campus, they can help provide access and guidance on how and when to use those. I will warn they're very spotty and can be gamed. And I think it's a poorly understood area right now. And that's why I think a lot of faculty have moved into a realm of open use where it's hey, and I really encourage this in the workplace as well. AI use is going on, right? Period. I mean, but let's be open and transparent about that use and not penalize it so that when I work with a peer, if they're comfortable disclosing that they used AI, I'm going to be a better editor and I'm going to understand what AI did and how it participated in the creation of a document or an assignment, right? By being open and knowing that, I can provide better feedback. I can see what the results were and learn with them. When it's in the shadows and I don't know what I don't know, has this student been doing everything? Has this colleague been writing everything with AI? Well, I might know their writing style depending on how long I've worked with them. I can see the word choices. Unfortunately, we don't get that relationship with a lot of students or with a lot of staff we might interact with. I have had peers who I've worked with over a long time that have submitted things to me. I'm like, holy cow, I've never heard you use that word. And I don't believe like you would ever use that word. Did you, Jennifer? And it's so embarrassing to do. Hey, did you write this with AI? Well, yeah, I did. It's like, oh, you know what? That's so cool. What did you use? How did it work? Would you tell me next time when you do this so that when I edit and review this, I can be a more conscious observer of what these outputs were? So that's kind of my take on it. I think that's the approach I'd encourage in the office and in the classroom for better use. But the plagiarism checkers do exist and are there. And DLT can provide, like, I think the best guidance on how to incorporate those into your classroom and how to best interpret the results.
So mine kind of goes along with that, and maybe it's a theoretical that, like you said, there's a lot changing that hasn't really been addressed. For example, if we use something or if we create something that AI generated, we acknowledge it's AI generated. We post it someplace like LinkedIn, where it's not necessarily connected to the university, but it'll pop up as a University of Utah employee said. We've acknowledged it as AI, but the information in it is essentially plagiarized by AI. You said Microsoft said, well, we're not responsible, but we've said it's AI, so we're not responsible, but the information contained in there is someone else's intellectual property. What happens? I know, so completely hypothetical, but when you said that, I thought,
yeah,
does acknowledging it's AI let us off the hook? Like, hey,
I think it
AI came up
helps.
with this.
I think it helps a lot. Like in business software, like if I do that in an email or in a published document, right? Hey, this is AI generated. It cites it as a collaborator, right? I think that'll be really interesting to see what APA says on how you cite AI in your work process. I think in small instances like LinkedIn, disclosing that is enough, right? Because this is just an ethical area right now. There's no laws pertaining to it. And I mean, copyright's really interesting. Did your work and the work of the AI combined transform any original piece enough to say this is a unique and new thing? That's what the courts would look at, right? Was this a transformative use of the subject matter? And there's a lot of arguments to make that, hey, I worked with an AI to produce this, that you could look at. And I think absolutely using it in LinkedIn and disclosing it is like a great first step at normalizing collaboration with AI and providing like a source to it. I think that's like a very low risk space as well. It's not held out as a publication by the University of Utah, right? It's you as an individual. In the University of Utah, the marketing department has guidelines and regulations on how and when you put things out as a University of Utah work, how AI should be discussed and disclosed and viewed. And that's different from like individual use, which you'd see on LinkedIn. So I think those are some of the concept I'd use to distinguish the work that way. Yeah.
All right, I think we'll go ahead and stop there and thank Clayton for this talk. All right, so we are breaking out into an afternoon workshop
to help you navigate the nonsense that is the University of Utah's bureaucracy and how you go about working with these tools, leveraging these tools, getting your ideas for AI use approved and integrated into your work life are areas I absolutely want to focus on. I did go ahead and pull up Phoebe's slides on a lot of like the data protections and where those fall, so we can discuss that in more detail, which I'm really excited about. It's a really interesting area. But before we go, I just want to start in Microsoft Copilot. So if you have a laptop, a phone, really any device, you can use Microsoft Copilot. And where you're going to want to visit is copilot.microsoft.com. And what you're going to do is sign in with your university ID at umail.utah.edu. This is really important because what it's going to do is give you this green shield. And this means you are in the protected environment where you have the smallest of rights to your content, to your prompts, and to your interactions. And it is infinitely better than what you get on the public internet using free accounts or anything like that. If you walk away with one thing today, use university tools for your research, for your worker interactions.